Her phone screen lit red. "Tell them what you did," she whispered. And in that moment, I stopped being her father and became her target. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. My name is Leonard Carver. I'm 66 years old. And this is what really happened. The station lights flickered once, then steadied, buzzing like flies caught in a jar. My daughter sat across from me, elbows pressed into the desk, her knuckles white as she clutched that phone like a drowning soul gripping driftwood. The pale glow from her screen lit up her cheek, catching a single tear sliding down. It shimmered under the light. But I knew that tear. Not born of grief, not carved from honesty. Just a practiced droplet, squeezed out on command. Another performance in a world where lies get likes and tears win followers. She lifted her eyes, locking onto me. "Tell them," she whispered. The tremble in her voice was deliberate, just enough to sound fragile. "Tell them what you did." Behind her, an officer shifted his weight. His boots tapped the tiled floor, sharp, clipped beats like a judge's gavel. Each strike echoed, bouncing off the sterile walls, hammering the air with judgment. Emily's thumb pressed the screen. A tiny red dot blinked to life. Recording. That was the moment. The line crossed. The instant I stopped being her father and became her quarry. I'd lived in that small Tennessee suburb, just outside Nashville, for more than 3 decades. A carpenter's calluses still lived on my hands, even if the strength had thinned with age. I built fences that outlasted storms, poured concrete that still held driveways firm, patched roofs that kept families dry. I was the man folks called when they needed something steady. The man who measured twice, cut once, and never talked more than was required. Silence had been my companion since childhood, and I wore it like armor. But that armor had no use here. Not against her. Not against blood. Emily, my only daughter. Her mother, my Darlene, God bless her, died 6 years ago. Breast cancer crept in quietly, then roared, devouring her body until it left nothing but the faint scent of lavender lotion on a pillow I couldn't bring myself to wash. When Darlene left this earth, Emily changed. She sped up. Faster cars, faster words, faster friends. Social media swallowed her whole. She sold her mama's jewelry with a claim of needing rent money. But no receipts ever appeared. Only handbags and neon-lit photos with strangers who called her M, but never stayed long. 2 years ago, I did something I thought was wise. I gave her partial control of the property deed. "Just in case something happens to me," I said. She wept that day, clung to me like the child she once was. I believed her heart had come home. Fool that I was. Hearts that truly come home don't draw maps to their father's ruin. It began 3 weeks back. I had just come in from the yard, sweat dripping down my back, shirt sticking like another skin. July heat in Tennessee doesn't forgive. It bakes you, suffocates you, presses against your ribs until every breath feels borrowed. That's when I saw it. An eviction notice. Pinned to the porch post with a single nail, swaying slightly in the hot wind like a warning from some cruel god. Emily leaned against her Prius, sunglasses hiding her eyes, sipping from one of those gleaming metal tumblers. Even from the steps, I could smell the vodka cutting through the flavored water. She didn't shift, didn't even blink at me holding the paper. "You could have just asked for more time," I muttered, voice hoarse from the heat and the betrayal etched in my throat. She only shrugged. "It's not personal, Dad. Just property alignment." That phrase, cold, mechanical, as if spoken from some seminar, some TikTok finance guru teaching children how to strip their families bare. That was the moment I knew. She hadn't been planning to sell the house. She already had. And so I ended up here. A gray interrogation room in downtown Nashville precinct. paint peeling faintly at the corners. Tennessee's flag drooping limp in the corner, like it had given up. An air vent overhead clattered in uneven bursts, like a lazy metronome ticking off the seconds of my patience. Emily leaned forward, voice sharper now, louder, filling the silence. He pushed me, screamed at me. I have the footage. I just want to be safe. She turned her gaze toward me. Not hate, not anger, calculation, as if she were studying a chart and watching her stock rise. The officer scribbled something. His pen scratched paper like a blade carving bone. He nodded slowly, asked her if she had the video. She nodded back, thumb trembling above the screen. I leaned back in my chair, fingers interlaced across my stomach, my breath even. Silence is a language I speak fluently. But then she twisted the knife. I know he has weapons in the house, she added. Guns, probably not even registered. That sentence lit the officer's eyes. I blinked, slow, deliberate, counting my breath the way Darlene once taught me to count sheep on restless nights. She hated that .22 in the garage. Her granddaddy's gift to me before he passed. Called it hick stuff. Truth was, I hadn't fired it in years, but she wasn't scared of that rifle. Number she was scared I'd use the truth, so she made sure the lie fired first. The chair under me groaned as I shifted my weight. Too loud, too heavy. Everything in that room echoed. The officer finally turned his eyes to me. Mr. Carver, do you have any response to these accusations? I looked at my daughter. She smiled. Not kind, not cruel, just certain. I looked back at him. No, I said. 1 second. 2. No, I don't. Let her dig. Here's the thing about lies. They're a performance. They need rehearsals, breath control, timed pauses. Emily delivered her lines like a Broadway actress, milking every tremor, every stutter, every pause. Pens scribbled, heads nodded. The room applauded her with silence. But she hadn't seen the other camera. Not the hallway lens. Not the timestamp burned in the corner. Not the young deputy I'd spoken with 12 hours earlier. And she sure as hell hadn't noticed the buzz in my pocket. The quiet vibration of my phone, whispering, "We're live." Because I'd already been here, the night before. Flash drive in hand, notarized, time-stamped. 3 videos. Emily pulling the lockbox from my closet. Emily forging my signature on a seller's form. Emily rehearsing her fear speech in her Prius. Fake tears rolling while she tested takes like an actress in front of a mirror. The footage came from a neighbor's Ring camera and my own security system. The one she always assumed was dead. I handed it to Deputy Mark on night shift. Told him plainly, "You don't need to believe me now. Just log it. Watch it later." He nodded. Quiet kid. Still had the look of a boy I once coached in Little League, chewing his lip whenever numbers got tricky. Now, in this harsh room, my daughter's truth began to unravel, pixel by pixel. She lifted her phone toward the sergeant. "Here's the video," she said, her voice just a shade too fast now. The officer took it, watched, paused, rewound. His brow furrowed, shadow deepening across his forehead. He leaned closer, tapped the screen. "Ma'am, this starts mid-argument. There's no lead-in, no time marker." Emily blinked. It cut off, but it was worse before. He lifted his palm, silencing her, then turned to me. "Mr. Carver, do you have anything on your end?" I nodded. Back pocket, flash drive, should still be in the evidence tray. He raised a brow, rose to his feet, walked out. Emily's mouth parted, then closed. Her confidence shrank in her throat. She looked younger then, smaller. But innocence? Number never innocence. The door swung open again. The officer returned, flash drive in hand, and behind him another shadow stepped in. Deputy Mark. Emily's face drained. "Mark?" she whispered. He gave a calm nod. "She didn't recognize me last night," he said softly. "But I was your student. Senior year. You helped me through trig." I gave half a smile. "Still can't do trig." He held up the drive. "Want to take a look, Sergeant?" The playback began, and second by second, I watched Emily's confidence leak away, dripping like water through a cracked pipe. She tried to talk over the audio, to deny the timestamp, to claim it was edited, a deep fake, a trick. But the air had shifted. The room turned cold. The sergeant finally turned to me. "Would you be willing to sign a counter-statement?" I nodded once. Emily's phone lay on the desk, the same phone she had brandished like a sword. Its screen cracked now, hairline fracture cutting across her reflection. It hadn't betrayed her. She had. And in the end, it remembered everything. The officer tapped a key. The monitor blinked once, black for a fraction of a breath, then the footage filled the interrogation room. The sound hit first. Emily's voice. It came back to us through the tinny station speakers, bouncing off the glass walls, too loud, too desperate, the echo stretching her words into something jagged. "Wait! No, that's not what happened. That's out of context. He was yelling before that." Her hands trembled, but her eyes didn't. They darted sharp, like an animal looking for an exit. She turned toward the sergeant. He didn't flinch, didn't even blink. Behind him, the glass showed a second version of me, a reflection, sitting still, hands folded. A man who wasn't fighting gravity anymore, just watching as it shifted beneath someone else. Back in our town, folks used to have a saying, "A lie's only strong if the floor don't shift." That morning, the floor cracked open under her feet. The video rolled on. It showed her pulling the deed folder from the drawer. Not careful, not subtle, just pulling it like she owned it. Then her hand, left, not right, curling around a pen. Her right thumb wrapped in a bandage, a detail she forgot to lie about later. I saw her lean on the edge of my desk, steady the paper with her wrist, then scrawl my name in a slant that had too much curve, too little weight. It wasn't my hand. The room grew colder as the screen glowed on her face. Then another clip. Her car dashboard. Phone propped up against a coffee cup. Her face in profile, whispering lines like a child rehearsing for a school play. "You threatened me, Dad. Take one. You pushed me down. Take two." In between, she laughed, not nervous, not frightened. A careless laugh, the kind people let slip when they think no one's listening. It wasn't just perjury, it was rehearsal. The sergeant pressed pause. The room froze with him. He swiveled in his chair, slow, deliberate. "Ma'am," he said, his voice calm as gravel. "Do you have an explanation for this?" Emily's head turned like she was underwater. Eyes darting from me, to the sergeant, to the door. She adjusted her seat, legs crossing, her throat bobbed. I was afraid," she stammered. "I didn't know what else to do. My dad, he gets angry. You've never seen it. He's not who you think he is." Her voice cracked on angry, but not the way truth cracks. More like glass under pressure, breaking in patterns it rehearsed. And that's when the twist came. Not from her, from the corner. A voice, low, firm. "She said the same thing to me 3 years ago." Emily froze. The door hadn't groaned. No footsteps had warned her. He was just there now, standing in the room like he'd been waiting. Detective Arlen, clean navy suit, no tie, press badge tucked in his breast pocket. He stepped forward, arms crossed, gaze steady as stone. "Your daughter," he said, looking at me. Filed a temporary restraining order in 2021. Not against you, against another man. She claimed he hit her. Same words, same language, same bruise placement on the arm. He slid a file across the table, paper whispering against wood. And just like now, the footage didn't match. Emily's lips parted. Her face drained to the color of ash. I didn't think that would still be on file, she whispered. Arlen ignored her. He kept his focus on me. I pulled it the moment I saw your name in the system, Mr. Carver. I remembered the old case. And this time, I thought, let's ask a few more questions. The room tightened. You could have heard a paperclip fall. The sergeant cleared his throat. The pen in his hand clicked once. Ms. Carver, he said, voice low. Place your phone on the table. Do not touch it. Her shoulders twitched, but she obeyed. The phone buzzed once as it hit the surface. A notification blinked across the cracked screen. Michael, realtor. Buyer wants to close Thursday. Did your dad sign yet? The words glowed in that silent room like neon, burning against her. We didn't need more proof. But the phone gave it anyway. The sergeant angled it toward her, said nothing. She stared at it like it was a blade dangling above her. The silence grew thick, not quiet, heavy. It hummed. It coiled around us. Emily's hand twitched toward the phone. Don't. Detective Arlen's voice cut like a knife. She froze, hands halfway. Sit back, he said flatly. You're not helping yourself anymore. She obeyed. Then came the paperwork. Slow. Intentional. The officer rose, moved to the cabinet. He pulled a folder free, its spine creaking. One by one, he laid the pieces of her undoing on the desk. The notarized affidavit I'd brought the night before. The printout of the attempted property transfer. A copy of her phone call log, not from her device, but straight from the provider. I'd signed nothing, but she had signed too much. You know what this looks like? The sergeant asked. Emily's throat clicked. She didn't answer. Fraud, he said. Perjury. Attempted unlawful sale of real property under forged consent. He turned to Arlen. Anything I'm missing? The detective shrugged lightly. Only that she tried to initiate a mental health evaluation hold on her father last month, citing hallucinations, memory issues. The sergeant's brow lifted. Emily dropped her face into her hands. Me? I didn't move. I only looked at the wall clock, watched the second hand drag its way around, and I thought of something small. The snow shovel leaning against my porch. Tennessee winters aren't harsh, but that past February had thrown us one freak storm. I remembered clearing the walkway, my back aching, my breath a fog. Emily had sat in her car, heat blasting, thumbs busy on her phone, watching. She never offered to help. She always thought things would melt on their own. The sergeant leaned closer, his tone softer now. Mr. Carver, would you like to file a formal statement? We're prepared to support a civil case as well. I nodded. But I'm not looking for money, I said. He tilted his head. Meaning? I turned to Emily. Meaning, I want her to learn the world doesn't bend just because she wants it to. Emily's head jerked up. Tears streaked, but her eyes burned hot. You don't get to talk to me like that, she shouted. Her chair scraped back, metal shrieking on tile. You weren't even there for most of my life. She spun to the officers, spit flying with the words. He let Mom die. Do you know that? He sat at home while she wasted away. Her words cut, sharp as broken glass. My jaw twitched, my chest tightened. But I stayed silent. I'd buried Darlene once. I wasn't about to dig her up again here. The detective broke the air. "You were 26 when your mother passed," he said. "You missed 3 oncology appointments. We have the logs." Emily's scream tore out of her, but died fast, leaving only ragged breath. The sergeant rose to his feet. "Ms. Carver, I suggest you stop speaking. You have the right to remain silent. I'd strongly advise you use it." She collapsed back into her chair. The energy drained, the spark gone. What sat before us wasn't a strategist, not a victim, just a child. A child with a broken tool. A phone that had stopped obeying. A performance that had lost its script. Outside, rain began to fall. A slow, steady patter against the station windows. I stood, the sound filling my chest, like something cleansing. "Am I free to leave?" I asked. The sergeant nodded once. "For now, yes. We may need you back when the report is complete." I turned, looked at Emily. She never raised her head, never looked at me, only stared at the black screen of a phone that had turned witness. The hallway smelled of burnt coffee and old leather. An officer passed by, nodded, silent. The echo of my boots followed me, louder than hers now. In a southern town, truth moves slow, but it moves. And when it arrives, it rides in on flash drives and timestamps. It doesn't knock, it enters. By the time I stepped out into the wet Tennessee heat, the courthouse across the street looked like it had been dipped in steam. Rain fell in clean vertical lines, not slanted, not hurried, just straight, merciless strokes, beading on the sidewalk like sweat dripping down truth's back. The air smelled of wet asphalt and rust, heavy enough to cling to the lungs. I didn't run, didn't raise my voice, didn't plead or shout or threaten like she expected I would when she tried to corner me with her lies. I just walked out of that station with the weight of a flash drive pressing against my pocket. Small, cold, yet heavier than anything I'd carried in years, because inside it lived a truth that had already started to spread, already begun carving its way through the walls of her performance. But revenge? Number. Not yet. I wasn't chasing revenge. I wasn't swinging fists. I was following a trail of paperwork, and sooner than she thought, she'd be standing right at the end of it. The next stop wasn't home. It was the county clerk's office. People forget that most of the real power in America doesn't sit behind microphones or gavels. It sits behind counters, in manila folders, in drawers that smell like dust and ink. Power lives in the sound of a stamp slamming down, in the scratch of a pen, in the quiet certainty of something filed. "Good morning," the woman at the glass window said. Her badge read, Carla. I stepped forward, rain dripping from the brim of my cap. "Leonard Carver," I said. "I need a certified copy of my property title, original ownership record, and all subsequent adjustments." She didn't blink, didn't raise a brow, just gave me the kind of look clerks give everyone, a practiced neutrality that says, "You're one of 100 today." "Do you have the parcel ID or address, sir?" I slid a folded slip across. The paper was damp around the edges from the rain, but the numbers were legible. Her fingers clicked across the keyboard. She squinted at the screen, paused, frowned. "Looks like a transfer request was filed last week." My jaw tightened. "To Emily Carver?" I asked. "Yes, sir." She didn't even have to glance down again. Buyer listed as Michael J. Harmon. That name ring a bell? The name hit like a dull hammer. I exhaled slow through my nose. She kept reading. "But the transfer hasn't been finalized. Missing a wet signature from both current title holders." She looked back up at me. "You're one of them, Mr. Carver?" I nodded. "And I didn't sign anything." Her fingers tapped a few more keys. Then the printer hummed, spitting out the pages. She clipped them together with practiced efficiency. There it was. Emily's forged version of my name, scratched in blue pen. No weight, no angle, no middle initial. A counterfeit that didn't even bother to pretend well. "I need a fraud affidavit," I said. Without hesitation, she pulled open a drawer. "Here's the form." I took the pen from her counter jar, the kind with flowers taped around the base so no one stole it. I wrote slow, careful, every letter deliberate, as if Darlene herself were watching me from across the table. When I finished, Carla stamped it twice. "You'll want to bring this to the district court clerk for hearing filing," she said. "You've got 3 days. I'll be there tomorrow morning." She tore off a copy, slid it under the glass. "It's good you caught this before the second filing went through." I gave a tired half smile. "I didn't catch it," I said. She handed it to me. At home, I sat at the kitchen table where Darlene used to do the bills. The wood bore faint scratches from decades of elbows, grocery lists, and half-drunk coffee mugs. The box fan in the corner clattered in its usual offbeat rhythm. It was the kind of sound that most people would tune out. Me? I let it count the seconds while I worked. Outside, the rain softened to a mist. Inside, I spread the documents across the table like puzzle pieces from a box only I knew how to solve. The notarized video log, phone call transcriptions, her realtor's text messages, the forged power of attorney attempt from 2 months back, caught by my bank's fraud unit and flagged. One by one, I clipped each piece into the growing binder I was building. Not for the court, for her. Because sometimes truth shouldn't be slammed down like a gavel. Sometimes it should be handed slowly across the table, page by page, until the silence in between those pages grows heavy enough to turn into a confession. I had just smoothed out the affidavit when the phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring twice, then picked up. "Mr. Carver?" a voice asked. "Speaking." "This is Officer Braden from the sheriff's office. Your daughter attempted to access the property this evening with a moving truck, claimed she was executing her legal right as primary holder." My grip tightened on the receiver, my jaw locked. "And?" "We turned her away," Braden said. "She didn't have a warrant, no proof of sale. Said something about you reneging on a verbal agreement." "But sir," he hesitated. "She was angry. Said she'd be back with a lawyer." I closed my eyes. "I'll be ready," I said. And I was. Because the next folder didn't come from my desk drawer. It came from the Courthouse Records Division, with a case number, timestamp, and seal that no one could rewrite. The next morning, I stood in the Davidson County Civil Filing Office, folder in hand. Behind me, a line of folks shifted in worn plastic chairs. Traffic violations, custody disputes, landlord squabbles, everyday battles of the forgotten. But mine was betrayal dressed up as business. The clerk scanned my ID, then flipped through my packet. His brow furrowed as his eyes hit the forged signature, then lingered on the realtor text printout. Finally, he reached for the stamp. The sound echoed through the office like a gunshot muffled in velvet. "This will place a temporary freeze on any transfer related to the property. The hearing is in 10 business days." "Do I need a lawyer?" I asked. "You can represent yourself, Mr. Carver, but bring every document." I nodded once. "I've got the originals and the backups." By Thursday, Emily was back in the police station, not sitting across from me this time. This time she was there as a respondent. I wouldn't have known if Deputy Mark hadn't called. "Thought you'd like to know," he said. His voice had a quiet humor in it. "She showed up this morning demanding to press harassment charges, claimed you hacked her phone." A laugh escaped me, short, bitter. "That old line?" He chuckled too. "We already pulled her provider records. No hacking. She just didn't realize her cloud backups were public linked. Her own sync settings sold her out." "Poetic," I said. "Strategic," he corrected. By the way, the sergeant approved a full evidence drop for the court case. You'll have a USB from us within 48 hours. Appreciate it. You still want her arrested? He asked. I paused, staring at the papers fanned across my table. No, I said finally. Let the paperwork talk first. That Saturday, a certified letter arrived in my mailbox. From Emily. 1 page. Printed. No signature. I unfolded it slowly. I didn't mean to hurt you, but you gave me no choice. You always chose the house over me. If you'd just signed it over, none of this would have happened. No apology. Just justification. Like betrayal was some kind of lease agreement with optional guilt clauses. I folded the letter once, slid it into the last tab of the binder. On the cover, written in thick black marker, Carver v. Carver, Exhibit Packet. At the top of the first page, the court date, 9 a.m., 10 days from now. It wasn't vengeance. Not yet. But it was a blade being sharpened in the open. And every breath she took from here on out would be part of the countdown. Back in town, whispers had already started. The pastor's wife told someone she saw Emily yelling at the DMV clerk. Another neighbor said she stormed out of a salon after being denied her usual appointment. I didn't need to gloat. The truth was already walking beside her like a shadow. And the more she tried to outrun it, the more people leaned in and whispered, what happened between her and her father? Soon they'd know, not from my lips, but from the court documents she couldn't edit, from the recordings she didn't know were rolling, from the phone that refused to lie, no matter how badly she begged it to. The day of the hearing, the courthouse smelled of copier toner and wet coats. That scent you only get in government buildings after rain, paper, ink, and the faint tang of damp wool. Outside, the Tennessee morning clung heavy. Humidity pressed against the glass doors like a living thing. My shirt stuck at the collar before I even stepped in. I wore my Sunday shirt, navy, no tie. The same one I'd worn at Darlene's funeral. Not because I needed to impress anyone, not because fabric could sway judgment, but because I knew Emily would dress for performance, and I wasn't playing the same part. She came in 6 minutes late. I could hear her heels before I saw her. Sharp, staccato strikes on the marble, echoing up to the vaulted ceiling. Her lawyer followed 2 paces behind. Young. Too young to carry the kind of lies she'd boxed up for him. Her hair was pulled tight in a bun, so tight it looked like it might snap something at the roots. She scanned the room with that same air she'd carried since her 20s, like she was walking into a place built to bend around her. She didn't look at me, not once. But her lawyer did. He approached before the session even began, lowering his voice to a whisper, like we were conspiring. "Mr. Carver," he said, leaning closer, "is there any chance this could be mediated outside the court? My client's interested in a private resolution." I looked at him flat. "I brought receipts," I said, my voice low, steady. "I'm here for clarity, not compromise." He swallowed, Adam's apple bobbing once, nodded, walked back. His step sounded smaller than hers. The bailiff opened the session. The heavy oak doors groaned, as if even they disliked the weight of what was about to be said. Judge Morrison presided. Mid-60s, glasses low. Her stare sharp enough to melt bad paperwork without saying a word. She glanced down at the file, her tone cut clean. Civil Claim 4412-C, Carver v. Carver. Allegation of property fraud and forgery. Let's proceed. Emily's lawyer jumped first, too eager, words tripping over themselves. "Your Honor, my client contends this is a misunderstanding." Morrison lifted a hand, just a hand, and it silenced him like a shut door. "Save it. Let's look at the documents." Her gaze turned to me. "Mr. Carver, you're self-representing?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Let's see what you've brought." I stepped forward, my footsteps muffled by the old carpet. Placed 3 folders on the clerk's table. Tab 1, Certified Title Deed and Ownership Breakdown. Tab 2, Fraud Affidavit with signature comparison, mine versus hers, side by side. Tab 3, USB stick. Video evidence, time-stamped, metadata intact, sworn by affidavit. I didn't speak, didn't need to. The courtroom had grown so still, you could hear the faint click of the USB sliding into the port. And then, her face filled the screen. Emily. Her own phone had captured it, practicing, mock crying, pacing in her car, whispering lines like she was rehearsing a monologue for a play that had only one intended audience, a judge who would never see it the way she wanted. The sound of her laugh, careless, between takes, hung in the courtroom like a ghost. The judge's expression didn't change, not until the ring cam footage rolled. That's when Morrison turned. "Ms. Carver, anything to say before we proceed?" Emily stood, shaky, her voice thinned by the weight of the room. "That was taken without my consent." The judge cut her off without hesitation. "It was taken by the property owner's system, well within the law. Continue." Emily's mouth closed, jaw tight. But the real turn didn't come from me. It came from the back of the courtroom. A door creaked. Boots sounded against the floor. Officer Braden walked in, uniform crisp, posture straight. His presence filled the silence like a closing book. He stepped forward, folder in hand. "Your Honor," he said, voice carrying steady. "Supplemental materials from the Sheriff's Department. Package includes call logs, text logs, and public social media posts authored by the defendant, referring to the fraudulent sale as a done deal days before the attempted signing." He placed the file on the clerk's desk. Emily's lawyer sank lower in his chair, face buried in his notes. His pen tapped once, nervously. It wasn't just over. It was unraveling, one thread at a time. The judge flipped through the pages, paused, her eyes narrowed. She read aloud one text Emily had sent her realtor. "He's too dumb to notice. I'll forge it and clean it up later." The words echoed in the paneled chamber. The gallery gasped. One sharp inhale, collective, like a church congregation caught off guard during a sermon. But Morrison didn't blink. "This isn't a misunderstanding, Ms. Carver," she said evenly. "This is criminal behavior disguised as entitlement." Then came the line that shifted the air. "This court is filing a referral to the district attorney's office for potential prosecution." Emily's body dropped into her chair as if her bones had given out. Her hands trembled against her lap. Her lawyer bent close, whispering furiously. She only shook her head. Then, for the first time in months, her eyes met mine. Wide, red, not from grief, not even from shame, from disbelief. Disbelief that the world hadn't bent for her. Disbelief that her father hadn't folded. The judge turned back to me. "Mr. Carver, do you wish to pursue damages?" I shook my head slowly. "No, Your Honor. Just restoration of title, and her name removed from it." "Granted," she said, the word as final as a seal. "Effective immediately. Title to be returned solely to Leonard Carver. Deed refiled with the county clerk." The gavel dropped. The sound cut through the room like thunder contained in wood. Outside, the sky had cleared, but the ground still glistened. She caught me by the courthouse steps, under the shade of the old elm tree. No lawyers, no cameras, just father and daughter. Her voice came small. "You didn't have to take it this far." I looked at her. My words came slower than my heartbeat. "You didn't have to lie." She blinked, swallowed. I was scared I'd have nothing. I held her stare. You stole from the one person who gave you everything. Her lip trembled. For a moment, she looked like the little girl who once clung to my leg at county fairs. But that memory had no power here. Please, she whispered, don't press charges. I said nothing. Sometimes silence is sharper than any answer. She stepped back, one heel scraping the stone, and then she was gone. That was the last time I saw her. 2 weeks later, a notice came by mail. Formal declination from the district attorney, pending restitution agreement. She'd accepted, no criminal trial, but permanent removal from all property claims. Her name erased from every attachment like chalk wiped off a board. The house was mine again. But the door? The door stayed locked. That evening, I sat at the same kitchen table. Same fan clattering in the corner. Same scuffed floorboards Darlene once swept with her apron strings tied at her waist. In my hands rested Emily's old Sears shoebox, the one she once used to keep her treasures. Baby photos, ribbons, birthday cards. I opened it. Inside lay her graduation cap, a third-grade art ribbon, and a photo of the three of us, me, her, and Darlene, smiling in the sunlight of a summer long gone. I didn't cry. I just closed the lid, because truth, when it comes, doesn't always soothe. Sometimes it cuts, but sometimes it rescues. Rescues you from the stories people try to tell about you, even when they share your name. 3 months passed. Fall settled over Tennessee like an old quilt, stitched with colors, worn soft at the edges, heavy enough to remind you of winters past. The afternoons were still warm, golden light stretching long across the fences, but the evenings whispered of what was coming. The air thinned, the crickets grew quieter. The trees in my backyard wore new coats, reds, yellows, and that one shade of orange Emily used to draw when she was little. Not quite pumpkin, not quite fire. The in-between orange only kids and October seemed to understand. But I wasn't thinking about colors that day. I was holding an envelope, rustling paper, legal seal, county stamped, title correction approval, Davidson County Clerk of Deeds. Filed October 7th, 9:03 a.m. Record number 874-332C. It was done. She was removed from everything. Deed, power of attorney, contingency claim, emergency contact. Every loophole she thought she'd found was closed. Every back door she imagined herself walking through had been sealed shut. She couldn't so much as request a Medicare inquiry on my behalf now without my signature. I laid the envelope down on the kitchen table, the same table where Darlene once clipped coupons, balanced checkbooks, and made lists in her neat handwriting. Beside it sat a cup of lukewarm coffee and the last slice of apple pie I'd bought from the church bake sale. Darlene would have called that celebration food. I just called it closure. Emily hadn't called, not once, not since the day under the elm tree, when she told me I didn't have to take it so far, when she asked me not to press charges, when I looked at her and gave her silence instead. But the world didn't stop moving. The realtor, Michael Harmon, didn't skate free. He lost his license. His firm settled quietly, a short paragraph in the county business report, after being named in my fraud affidavit. No apology letter. Just money changing hands and a license revoked. Emily's name showed up in county records under civil violation. Attempted fraudulent conveyance. Not prison, not orange jumpsuits, but a stain. A mark carved into digital stone. A footprint that doesn't wash away with time. The house she thought she'd steal? Still had my boots by the door. My wrench on the porch swing chain. The faded photo of Darlene smiling, framed above the mantel. My life, right where I'd left it. One morning, a knock came at the door. It wasn't her. It was Officer Braden. Plain clothes, but you could still see the posture. He carried respect in his shoulders. He handed me a padded envelope. "Final evidence packet," he said, his tone polite, almost careful. "For your records." I opened it at the table. Inside, a printed transcript of the interrogation at the station. Her text logs, redacted but clear enough. A CD with a handwritten label, unedited footage, and her original complaint form, now stamped in bold, "Withdrawn." I hadn't asked for it, but I appreciated it. Paper remembers longer than people. Braden lingered by the doorway, scratched the back of his neck. "You ever think she'll come back around?" he asked. I looked past him, down the empty road, the maple trees shedding their leaves in quiet bursts. "She might," I said, "but if she does, it'll have to be on her feet, not on my porch." He nodded slowly. "You did it right, Mr. Carver." "I did it clean," I corrected. His eyes softened. "Not many folks your age would have had the clarity to collect all that. You were steps ahead." A half-smile tugged at my mouth. "When you raise someone from the ground up," I said, "you tend to know where they'll stumble." The holidays came. Thanksgiving arrived with dry winds that rattled the loose siding, and a small spread laid across my table. Stuffing, sweet potatoes, a turkey breast, not the whole bird, just enough for one. I left a chair empty. Not for her, for peace. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't gloating. It isn't public humiliation. It isn't watching someone beg. It's healing in plain sight. It's choosing to eat slow, to chew your food, to sip coffee, and let the warmth linger, while the storm that tried to knock you down breaks against its own weight. In town, the story traveled like all stories do in small places. Bent, crooked, worn thin in some spots, thickened in others. I heard he beat the case. No, I think the daughter got caught lying. Didn't he represent himself? They didn't know the full details. Didn't need to. Because real justice doesn't beg for headlines. It doesn't need applause. It echoes in the quiet, in rustling papers, in the heavy drop of a gavel, in boots walking out of a courtroom steadier than they went in a daughter realizing her phone didn't lie, that it remembered. One evening, I pulled down Emily's old Sears shoebox from the shelf, the one I hadn't thrown away, the one that carried her fragments, her third-grade ribbon, her graduation cap, the photo of the three of us before the years bent us sideways. I thought about tossing it then, thought about making a clean sweep, but I didn't. Instead, I slid it onto the shelf above the washer, high enough that if someone ever wanted to reach for it, they'd have to stretch. They'd have to mean it. To this day, the USB drive sits inside my safe, a plastic sleeve keeping it clean, a label written in my own hand. Truth, recorded, not rehearsed. That's all I ever needed. Not applause, not pity. Just the certainty that when the lies came loud, the truth stayed steady. And sometimes, that's all it takes to leave them shaking. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments.